Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, $230 billion wiped from the housing market, and it could get considerably worse. My panel will join me shortly to discuss the day's top headlines. Chris Bowen too occupied with his role at COP31 to address the domestic energy crisis. Ian Plimer has some thoughts on that. Kosher Gator will have the latest from the US, including Donald Trump's disappointment in Jeanine Pirro. And later in the hour, Alex Stein will tell us about the football superstar laying the boots into Anthony Fauci. And Lefties Losing It features this damsel in distress.
Besides, there's more to beauty than appearance. It's also about opinion, and your opinion is ugly as hell.
But first, Australia has entered a once-in-a-generation housing slump, and the crisis is likely to deepen further. Data shows property values have fallen by $230 billion in just 4 months. And should prices continue to slide, more than $1.25 trillion could be wiped from the market. Now, that's terrible news for the majority of Australians whose home is their biggest asset. And it's even worse news if you have a mortgage. Now, thousands of Australians have bought properties with a 5% deposit. They were encouraged to do that by the Albanese government's 5% deposit scheme. And some of those first home buyers are already in negative equity. They owe the bank more than their property is now worth. But the Albanese government is so economically illiterate that we've got some MPs, like this minister here, who don't know what negative equity even means. Have a listen to Matt Thistlethwaite.
99% of people have met their repayments or are ahead on their mortgages, which means they can't be in negative equity because they're ahead on their mortgage repayments. So the scheme is working very well.
Yep, that's a Labor minister who doesn't understand what negative equity means. He's messing it up with defaulting on your home loan repayments. Let's bring in the panel. Joining me now is former Liberal MP Nicole Flint and News24 contributor Prue McSween. Nicole, this Albanese government is good at setting records. We've had record decline in living standards, and now we've got record housing slump, a once-in-a-generation housing slump.
That's right, Rita. Unlike some of our incredible athletes at the Commonwealth Games, which have just wrapped up, we're seeing records set for all the wrong reasons under this appallingly bad Albanese Labor government. Look, they're hurting the very people they were allegedly trying to help with these ridiculous changes to the housing market. They're, as you've just outlined very well, young people, in particular first home buyers who have been enticed into the market on a 5% deposit, now have negative equity. And we have an assistant minister who doesn't even understand what that is, for goodness sake. What hope does Labor have of fixing the mess that they've created? But I mean, imagine the stress that you're under as a young person or couple in your first home, and you've seen the price of that property go down whilst you know exactly how much you owe the bank. And just wait until we see another interest rate rise, then they'll really be losing their minds. I mean, it's just appalling. They're not, what Labor we know were trying to do was force investors out of the market to allegedly free up more properties. But usually those investors are the ones that have built that property portfolio over years. They probably don't need to sell. They're going to hang on. Why on earth would you sell in a falling market? So this is the most colossal mess, $230 billion off housing prices around Australia. People won't sell if you can afford to ride it out, which then just stops new people getting into the market, young people in particular, and young people will be looking at it thinking, I don't want to owe the bank more than my house is worth.
Prue, one of the issues is the cost to build. It is so high, the regulatory environment is prohibitive, and the housing sector is only going to get worse. After August 10, that's the deadline for self-managed super funds to borrow to buy residential property. So if you ask me, the market is going to decline further.
You're right, Rita. Look, this would have to be the most duplicitous, dishonest government we've ever had. When you think about the fact that they're in collusion with Treasury, you know, it's like Treasury treachery, the way Treasury backs them up, you know, saying that rents will only go up $2 a week. that it's not going to affect supply. In fact, it's going to make supply better. But as you say, they never, ever talk to the key stakeholders, the builders who can't make the numbers add up. You know, this government is a numbers government, but the numbers they focus on are not economics. They're immigration numbers. You know, they're, migration numbers, demographic numbers, trying to appeal to young voters who, they want to woo. But of course, as you say, first-time buyers are going to be the ones that suffer under this one. This government has no clue. It has a treasurer who's got a number of degrees but hasn't got one in economics. A finance minister is useless. And this is what we're now seeing the evidence of.
Now, Pauline Hanson had to be shielded by riot police last night as protesters hurled abuse at the One Nation leader. Senator Hanson arrived at the Tower Hotel for the party's Victorian election campaign launch. One group of protesters managed to get past the police blockade and chanted, "Unite to fight the right and put the racist in the bin." Very imaginative there. One Nation's candidate for the Northern Metro region, Mark Nicholson, said the protests won't deter them.
This is only charging us further. We are not afraid of these people. They are banshees, they are violent, and we are fighting against them. And their stranglehold over this government is over.
Nicole, I had a look at the footage. It's the usual suspects, the same protesters you see at every left-wing protest. I do wonder if they've got jobs because they seem to be protesting an awful lot.
Probably funded by the unions, no doubt, Rita. But look, this is the ultimate problem with our nation right now. We live in a culture of no consequences. We're a country with no consequences. You can be aggressive, you can be violent, and literally nothing's probably going to happen to you. And let's just think for a moment about the huge waste of public taxpayer resources in having to have such a strong police presence, which thankfully there was, to keep these lunatics under control and keep Pauline Hanson and the One Nation members who are wanting to put their hand up to represent Victoria, let alone their supporters, safe. But we have to start seeing some proper consequences so that people are not inclined to go out and make such a dangerous nuisance of themselves, and also so that we stop wasting taxpayer resources. That not only it's the money, it's also the fact that these police should be cracking down on proper dangerous crime in Victoria, which we know has been absolutely rife under the Andrews and Allen governments.
Prue, I seem to recall Victoria Police handing some very large bills to right-wing figures when they were touring Melbourne, not because their audience was causing trouble, but their ideological opponents were causing trouble. What I don't understand is how these protesters who routinely disrupt, who routinely break the law, aren't handed a bill by Victoria Police.
Right. I mean, when you have a government that is trying to impose its socialist dictates in every area, whether it be education, in the way society runs generally, or in this case, censoring people, this isn't the Australia we want. This isn't democracy. But sadly, because they have infiltrated everywhere and imposed their dictates on us all, that there's no fairness anymore. You know, people shouldn't be shut down for their opinion. We should be able to hear their opinion and then we make a judgment ourselves. But that's not what this government wants. It wants to tell you how to think, how to act, and penalise you if you don't abide by their rules.
Now, former ACCC Chairman Alan Fels has called out the government's failure to stop goods made with forced labour from entering the country. It follows the Trump administration imposing a 12.5% tariff on Australian exports if we don't update modern slavery laws. The Albanese government has defended the laws, but Alan Fels says Trump is right.
Sorry, Prime Minister, you're wrong. Donald Trump is right.
In June, the Trump administration put Australia on notice, accusing it of failing to stop goods made with forced labour entering the country. It threatened to impose a 12.5% tariff on Australian exports. The Prime Minister's response was unequivocal.
Australia has robust, comprehensive and world-leading legislation addressing forced labour and modern slavery.
On this one, Donald Trump is correct and the Prime Minister is wrong. We do not have robust, comprehensive, world-leading legislation. Compared with other countries that take it much more seriously, we are a laggard.
Prue, the US bans imports linked to forced labour. It has banned products from Zhejiang province in China, but Australia has no such laws in place because I guess we don't want to offend the Chinese. We're so terrified of offending the CCP that we are now, in the eyes of the US, contravening these anti-slavery laws, and we're importing products that could be made by forced labour.
Well, ugly politics by the handsome boy, you know, who doesn't want to upset China, his masters. Let's face it, he's got this cosy relationship with China and he's bending over backwards to accommodate them.
Nicole, that 12.5% tariff has been applied now. It's been in place for a couple of weeks. How is the Albanese government going to manage this? How are they going to manage the US demands and not upset China? Because handsome boy is an appeaser.
Isn't he just? And handsome boy's, you know, got a big problem on his hands on this one, Rita. So, look, I think Prue's just expressed it beautifully. This is the perfect conundrum. What do you do? And offend your good friends, the Chinese, or just hurt Australian businesses with the tariffs that have just been applied? We have, unfortunately, seen what China is prepared to do when you do offend them. So if anyone was going to fix it, surely it's the great friends of China, the Albanese Labor government, Senator Penny Wong. So come on, Labor, give your mates a call and sort this out.
And Rita, sorry, the only other ironic thing is that Labor is so in bed with unions and, of course, would never accommodate this kind of treatment of workers in this country. So this, again, is another example of the hypocrisy of Labor.
Absolutely. They're happy to bleat on about historic slavery, but when we've got modern day slavery, when we've got people in forced labour camps, when we've got the Uyghur population being systematically persecuted, we don't seem to care too much about that in this country. We don't have the usual suspects making any sort of noise. And where do you think those solar panels, some of those solar panels are being made? There's been so much reported about this, and a lot of people have just got some willful blindness about them. Yeah. Now, just quickly before you go, The Australian had a report today about a $32.1 million employment scheme set up by Labor under the banner of workplace diversity. It's only put 55 people into jobs so far. The Real Jobs, Real Wages scheme gives money to employers to hire people at risk of long-term unemployment and promises employers a more diverse and inclusive workplace. So, Prue, this seems to be all about diversity, and yet the results are fairly appalling. Only 55 people put into jobs, costing about $195,000 per job found.
Well, this is also part of a $47 billion scheme that Labor's concocted. But they've forgotten to ask the most important stakeholder, which is the employer. And does the employer want to take on someone who's been spending 5 years eating twisties in front of a couch? I don't think so. So this is the problem that we face.
Prue McSween, Nicole Flynn, thank you so much for your time, ladies. Now, the federal government is facing a myriad of problems with its net zero ambitions. The transition to renewables is being frustrated by reality. Large-scale wind projects are falling behind. Investors are abandoning projects, and there are cost blowouts across the board, from Snowy 2.0 to the government's home batteries program. And yet the Climate Change and Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, is preoccupied with his role at COP31. Judith Sloan writes in today's Australian, as the air goes out of the net zero tire globally, it would have been preferable for Bowen to focus on the various pressing energy issues we face at home. These COP conferences come and go, but they won't solve our domestic energy problems. Joining me now for more on this is esteemed geologist, author and executive director at Hancock Energy, Professor Ian Plimer. Ian, COP31 will take place in Turkey in November, and Chris Bowen is having a Talkfest practice session, I guess you could call it, in Fiji in October. Is this a good use of his time and our money?
Well, it's certainly a great use of his ego. People go around stroking his peacock feathers and saying, "Your Excellency, what a wonderful man you are." But it's an absolute total waste of taxpayers' money. No one benefits from this. I can hear in the background here a bulldozer. Now, what does that bulldozer driver get out of this? Does his family get anything out of COP31? The only thing he'll get out is higher costs of diesel, the fact that he won't be able to work, the fact that his family won't work. This is an absolute ego trip by a person who's had a fantastically successful charisma bypass operation and a person who went around the world stage having people admire him and tell him what a wonderful person he is. This man has destroyed Australia's energy system. This man is costing us in Australia a fortune. If you live in rural Australia, where I'm at present in the outback, this man is destroying people's lives, destroying towns, destroying agriculture, and he adds no value at all to Australia. The quicker we get out of net zero, the better. The quicker we get out of Paris, the better. The quicker we actually have some common sense, which is very uncommon, is better. Now, this man should not be wasting $150 million of hard-earned taxpayers' money on yet again another COP. If COP was a successful procedure, we would have solved the world's problems after the first or the second COP meeting. We're up to number 31. It is a jaunt.
It is a jaunt, and they're now having pre-jaunts. They're having a session in Fiji before they have the one in Turkey. Bizarre. Though a lot of world leaders are skipping Fiji, so we're spending all this money and we're not even having attendance from some of these world leaders. Now, you'd think Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez would be focused on the illegal immigration crisis he's helped usher in. Instead, the leftist leader with a history of climate zealotry is scaremongering about global warming, which he blames for wildfires. He said that's why it's not enough to address the consequences. What we have to do is reduce its causes, anticipate its effects, and consequently better prepare our country to protect people's lives. Ian, Pedro has also said climate change kills. He said it kills people, it kills our ecosystem, our biodiversity, and it also destroys the things we as a society hold dear, our houses, our businesses, our livestock. How would you counsel this world leader?
Well, I would say to learn a little bit of history. Climate change does kill. Ask the Vikings who once lived on Greenland, who grew barley and wheat and had cattle and sheep and goats. They were wiped out by climate change. We know from a survey done of 34 million people worldwide that 90% of climate deaths are from the cold. It is the cold that kills. Climate does kill. The warm weather, people thrive. And we've only got to look at what happened in Roman times and in Greek times and in medieval warming and now in the modern times. We love it warm. Why do you think people from that cold, miserable, wet part of the world called England go to Spain for their holidays? And if he was really concerned about wildfires, he would plant fewer eucalypt trees. He would clean out the undergrowth. He would stop people deliberately lighting fires for their thrills or to clear land for real estate reasons. This has got nothing to do with climate. It's got a lot to do with human behaviour, but it's got nothing to do with climate.
Now, Gina Rinehart has launched legal action against the ABC and several senior executives after the national broadcaster refused to apologise or remove a segment which encouraged viewers to sodomise and murder the Hancock prospecting boss. Hancock Prospecting sent legal letters to the ABC's chair, Kim Williams, deputy chair, Lisa Caffrey, and managing director, Hugh Marks, listing a series of serious civil and criminal breaches. Ian, you are an executive director at Hancock Energy. You've worked closely with Gina Rinehart for many years. How do you view the manner in which she's perceived and treated by the Australian left?
With people out here, they love her because she has actually created wealth. She has created jobs. She has created a pride in our country, a pride in our athletes, a pride in our flag, a pride in our defence forces. She is the greatest woman this country has ever produced. And if you on the left want to criticise her, then you're anti-women. You are a misogynist. And this is what the ABC is showing. They are quite happy to be obscene, to show sexual perversity and to show sexual violence with someone who actually has created something, someone who's a woman, who I thought the ABC were very pro-woman, we're trying to help women. But no, they have put to air one of the most disgusting things that I have ever seen in my life. Now, this wasn't an accident. There was a production company that certainly viewed this a number of times before it went to the ABC, who bought this project. A number of people would have viewed it and given it the tick of approval. We cannot have our national broadcaster promoting sexual violence and transmitting porn that everyone can see. This was not anything that was humorous. This was a deliberate sexual attack on Mrs. Reinhardt, and I think litigation is probably too kind. I think the best thing we can do is to shut the ABC now and tell them to go out and find out what the real world's like and get themselves a decent job. But don't peddle porn using our money.
Ian, you said the ABC are all about women, or supposed to be all about women. That doesn't include conservative women. You lose your women card in the eyes of the left if you're a conservative. Then they show really their ugly, ugly underbelly. Professor Ian Plimer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Still to come, lefties losing it, and the latest from the US, including Donald Trump's disappointment in Jeanine Pirro. Kosher Gator is up next. Welcome back. It's time for Lefties Losing It, and we're going to get rolling with this damsel in distress who has no time for you or your ugly as hell opinions.
Got a bunch of passing, pick-me trans people up in my comments right now telling me that I'm making society a worse place for us all by being myself and sharing my experience. Let me tell you, you are privileged as hell to be passing. Not all of us want to be living up to society's expectations of gender norms and beauty standards. Besides, there's more to beauty than appearance. It's also about opinion, and your opinion is ugly as hell.
You see, if he says he's a woman, he's a woman. That's how the idiot left see the world. And he's backed by every weak-willed simpleton who puts pronouns in their bio or on their Instagram page. Now let's go skating.
Just like this big. So who knows what's going to happen. But here we go. Are you ready?
Using every bit of willpower not to make the easy joke there. Now let's check in on some members of the media who continue to be Fauci fanboys. Here is former CNN anchor Chris Cuomo.
I don't know who here needs to hear this, but if you were forced by a situation where people were coming after you to plead the fifth and take everything that comes with that, what would you be doing right now? I'd be in the fetal position or hiding. Tony Fauci is seeing patients. Why? Because he's a real one. And because what they're doing, going after him, is bullshit and everybody knows it. You want to find out who started COVID, that's great. Are you saying Tony Fauci did? Are you saying America did? Then what are we talking about? If you didn't like masks, if you didn't like mandates, if you didn't like any of that, go after the administrations that were okay with it.
Yeah, I wonder who those administrators and politicians were listening to, Chris. Whose orders were they following when they imposed mask mandates and vaccine mandates? You know, both Chris Cuomo and his lying brother, the former New York governor, have questions to answer. And these media hacks will never admit the truth about COVID, about the restrictions, or even Fauci, because that would be telling on themselves. They're all complicit and they know it. Now here's Bravo bigwig Andy Cohen. He's had another Fauci rant, and this one may be his craziest yet. Look at those crazy eyes.
Time for my mazel of the day. It goes to Dr. Anthony Fauci, who spent over 3 hours today being grilled, berated, and sworn at by Senate Republicans over the imaginary crimes they want you to believe he committed during his management of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, Andy Cohen, he really is one of the most reprehensible hypocrites in the entertainment world today. But not every lefty is determined to stay stupid on Fauci. Here is the Young Turks' Anna Kasparian.
The one thing that I think the conservative Americans were correct about, especially as it pertained to the pandemic, was questioning authority and questioning our institutions. When the pandemic began, I had too much trust in our institutions. I have now switched over to having zero trust in our institutions.
Now, President Trump is not exactly thrilled with the Office of U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro after federal prosecutors moved to dismiss vandalism charges against former Olympian David Hearn, who was accused of deliberately damaging the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. But just because he's not happy with Jeanine doesn't mean he's going to entertain questions from MS Now nuffies.
And frankly, I think she choked because the judge was really vicious. Instead of going after the people that did it, the judge went after her and went after her department. And I guess she choked. I don't know what the hell happened.
Are you reconsidering her role?
I don't know what you don't. You're fake news. Don't ever talk again. You're fake news. One of the worst in the business. Fortunately, nobody watches you.
Don't ever talk again. As Greg Gutfeld says, we don't deserve him. Let's bring in News24 contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, the president accused Jeanine Pirro of folding like an umbrella during that press conference. What's happening with these vandalism cases?
You know, we were talking, the reporter's question wasn't even that bad, a poor reporter. But he must atone for the sins of the network. Overall,
I think he's got form personally, but also he's from MS Now.
Yes,
so you can just imagine. But yeah, that particular question I thought was pretty reasonable. Is her job in jeopardy? And why aren't they pressing ahead with these cases? Obviously, DC, you've got a lot of Democrat-appointed judges there, which wouldn't be helping things.
Yes, and that's obviously what he was trying to needle, because anytime the allies, if there's a fracturing, they want to call that out. It is interesting. So there might very well be truth to Trump. Usually what he's saying, he has his finger on the pulse with these things, whether or not she choked. It is funny because she is deemed to be a tough cookie, usually, with these things. But to your point, the judges and just the overall apparatus in D.C. are generally not favorable. The defendant here is an Olympic canoeist, so maybe in the media there's some concern with that. And then the third piece is that the Department of Interior issued a report that apparently said there was something fundamentally wrong with the construction of the pool, and so that more of the damage could be attributed to that rather than what the canoeist did. So she's looking at all of that as a lawyer and probably made the assertion that it's not worth going after this.
Interesting. I just cannot believe we've got a political environment in the US where you've got people deliberately damaging the reflecting pool to try to embarrass Donald Trump, or just cheering on if there is a problem with it. If there's a return of blue-green algae, they're cheering for the algae. I mean, the craziness is reaching new heights. Now, New York Post reports that a non-profit funded by far-left billionaire George Soros is trying to silence a growing movement by 9/11 families to keep New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani from attending the 25th anniversary memorial for victims of the attack at Ground Zero. Kosha, tell me what's happening here. The 25-year anniversary is fast approaching, and I can understand why there will be a lot of families of 9/11 victims who don't want to see Zoran Mamdani there. They don't want to see him presiding over this tribute.
I see. It's hard to, first of all, believe it's been 25 years. I've talked about how I was there at the time, and I will never, ever forget the vision, the smell of the rubble, the vibe, the looks on people's faces after that. And then you look at someone like Mamdani, and even before him, what paved the way for his position and comments he's made about effectively they've deserved it, or America had this coming. That's broadly how they characterize it. It was Ilhan Omar with her very infamous quote, "Some people did something," that she said. Nicole Wallace during the J6 drama had likened it to 9/11. She said the J6 riots were like 9/11, which is also ludicrous. So all those types of comments have sort of created this permission structure to say that kind of thing. And it is very, very hurtful to those families. many of those families' kids are now full-grown adults, and they were very young when this happened, and their parents died in those towers, to find it extremely offensive. So they don't want that. I think what they're speaking to, and Mamdani, we have discussed, is very politically savvy, is there is this sliver of the electorate that is very, very tired of wars. It's actually more than a sliver, but there's a sliver who also further believes if the U.S. is constantly intervening in global affairs, you sort of invite hatred back. Not that the civilians deserved to die, but that the policy has sort of a boomerang effect. So he's latching onto that because he's aware that that is a rift on the right, on the left, and I think that's where he goes at. But the 25th anniversary is not the time or the place to do that.
No, absolutely not. And we're going to just show you a couple of reminders of why so many 9/11 families don't want Mayor Mamdani there. For starters, he's good friends with this guy. He campaigned with Hassan Piker, who said this.
America deserved 9/11, dude. I'm saying it.
America deserved 9/11. That's his words. Hassan Piker. And Kosha, it's hard to believe that less than 25 years after 9/11, New Yorkers elected a mayor who is cozy with Islamists and characters like Hassan Piker. I mean, you would have never in a million years predicted that could happen in such a short period of time.
It is so shocking in 25 years that that's happened. You can point to immigration. The demographics of the city are very, very different now than they were 25 years ago. Things can really change in a generation, which is effectively what that is, or half a generation. And also just what's happened with young people in general. The whole, they can't afford a house, they can't get a job, there's a lot of economic despair. And then they channel that into the change candidates, who they believe are the change candidates. And, it could have taken the shape of Obama, it could have taken the shape of Trump, it can take the shape of Mamdani. Very little in common with all three of those, but they all sort of represented change against the system. And Mamdani is the beneficiary of that. It just so happens that he says the things that he says that really is very, very insulting to any New Yorker, but especially the kids of the victims of 9/11 on the 25th anniversary. So I don't think they're going to stop doing that because they know it's going to get a lot of press pickup. And unfortunately, that's just baked into the cake now.
And it's not just Mamdani. He's got the other Democrats, socialists, as they call themselves, communists, who've got really very similar worldviews. This character, Aba Kavas, another Mamdani ally, has won her primary for New York State Senate. She said 9/11 was the manifestation of capitalism and white supremacy.
The system of capitalism and racism and white supremacy, etc., and Islamophobia have all been used, to colonize lands, right, to take resources from other people. And so this is like a long trajectory. And we're just seeing the manifestations of that continuation, right, with 9/11.
Yes, Islamophobia, colonisation, and just using every excuse under the sun to try to rationalise the horror of thousands of people being murdered in a terrorist attack, because that's what it was, and that's what people are forgetting now.
Terrorist attack, and the largest ever, over 3,000 people on civilian soil. Pearl Harbor was the other, but that was a military base. So nothing like this has ever happened. Their whole framework is oppressor and oppressed. So she's talking about this long continuum that we're on of oppressors needing to atone for their sins against the oppressed. That's kind of what they talk about. And again, even if there is a legitimate sliver in there about foreign policy, that's one thing, but that's not what she's saying. That's not what people from her ilk are saying. They also, I think, like the shock value and like to be provocative because they know that that's the way you get attention.
I think in their circles, that's not shocking. I think that's very much a accepted opinion. That is not going to be shocking those who support someone like that. And that's the worry, because the numbers of people with that worldview is increasing dramatically in places like New York, and a lot of the more reasonable people are leaving. We've seen New York just have a huge population shift going to places like Florida and Texas, and a lot of people blame COVID, and I'm sure they had a lot to do with it, but it seems like that trend has continued.
COVID, taxes, this kind of rhetoric. And you're right, I think Mamdani's election and then the election of the other people he backed in the U.S. Congress recently, in the primaries, for instance, are living breathing proof of exactly what you're saying, that the electorate has shifted, and we're just going to see more and more of this, unfortunately.
Now, setback for New York overnight with a federal judge blocking key portions of a state law That would have prohibited federal immigration agents from wearing masks and required them to display visible identification. This seems like a bit of a common sense ruling, Kosha. I mean, what are we going to have next? Have undercover cops wearing their police IDs? I mean, how are they supposed to do their work if they're screaming who they are and what they're doing there? So it's almost if this went through, you're creating an atmosphere or a climate for more clashes, because if they're going in and everyone knows who they are and what they're there to do, you're probably going to have more clashes occurring.
And they're getting doxxed. So these types of challenges have been happening around the country, and judges are ruling in some cases favorably and some unfavorably.
So when you say doxxed, you're talking about these individual ICE agents being identified and having these psychos showing up to their home.
Correct, and attacking their family members and kids and wives. So that has happened, or threats of that have happened. So that's why they're saying they need to do this, because they have been vilified. The ICE agent is now the #1 villain in the eyes of a pretty large swath of the country that's against mass deportations. So that's the argument. And then the counter-argument, of course, that they will bring is you should be able to show your badge, show who you are, and not wear a mask. But there is a due process aspect to it, and at the right time they will do that. If they're going in to take out illegals, that's kind of the crux of the argument, that you don't actually have the rights if you're there illegally and they're just trying to find you. So that is going to keep getting adjudicated in various battlefields, but for now it's certainly a win for ICE and the broader mass deportation agenda, even though so much opposition remains.
Now, one last New York story tonight. Mamdani has confirmed that his city-run grocery stores, how very socialist of him, well, they're going to require ID. He doesn't want people to buy up too much stock and resell it at a profit. So we're going to have ID, Kosha, to shop at a New York City-run grocery store, but Mamdani is dead set against having ID to vote. So we have some sort of election integrity. How does he explain that?
I think he knows he doesn't have to. Those contradictions are absurd. Actually, even in the previous topic that we just discussed, the masks, he and his ilk were very happy to mandate masks on the rest of us during COVID, for instance, even though we all know that it did little. But then not the ICE officers. Same thing here. No ID for voting, but ID in the grocery store, which is his socialist dream. He wants to ration and centrally plan supermarkets and controlling that. So he doesn't have to explain it. Those of us paying attention know it's absurd, but unfortunately a lot of people don't pay attention, and so these kinds of contradictions slide.
Now, let's have a look at this exchange between CNN's Dana Bash and the Health Secretary, RFK Jr. He accuses her here of journalistic malpractice.
You were part of the problem.
No, I wasn't part of the problem.
There was absolute press malpractice. You weren't allowing your
Mr.
job.
Secretary,
Your job
is
a fierce skepticism toward authority. And
yes,
you weren't doing that. You were beating up
My
on
job
people
is also
who were dissenting.
No. Okay. Are you want to sit here and attack me?
Oh dear. Now, I've got to say, I'd have a lot more respect for Bash and all the other media commentators, anchors, if they just owned up to the fact that they got played. They got played by Fauci and other health bureaucrats. But this doubling down is only making it worse. It really is. Unless you're really in that bubble and you're not exposed to anything else, you know that things have gone terribly wrong. You probably, even if you haven't seen it, have heard about Anthony Fauci pleading the fifth 111 times.
It's funny because they could easily make him the scapegoat. She could easily say that I was listening to the chief health bureaucrat, but they won't throw him under the bus. They really sort of have formed this ring of protection around Fauci, and they're politicizing that whole thing. Good for RFK Jr. He knows of what he speaks because he, in particular, was exceptionally censored in the early days. All the big tech platforms deplatformed him, canceled his accounts, all of that. The media companies certainly didn't stand up for him in that regard, and they did invite him on, but in a very, very critical way, did not allow him to freely
basically invited him on to lecture him.
Correct.
To tell him that he was dangerous, that he was going to cost people their lives. That was why I was there.
And he's been vindicated because everybody knows that he was on the right side of that debate. And he wasn't even arguing himself in that. He was making a macro point, which is that when the next pandemic arrives, which is what this whole segment was about, civil liberties should be protected. You don't throw civil liberties out the door because you're trying to figure things out as you go. And she was trying to keep it very micro, like, oh, what should we do? What are some of the practical steps that we should be taking? And he did not want to go there. He wanted to keep it macro and focus on the fundamentals.
Coach Gator, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Still to come, the American football superstar laying the boots into Anthony Fauci. Alex Stein has the details. Welcome back. Now, Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers has mocked Anthony preemptive immunity Fauci over his decision to plead the Fifth 111 times during a Senate hearing last week.
How do you kind of view this year versus maybe the years of the past?
I'm going to plead the Fifth.
Okay.
Okay. Like
Gotta love that guy.
Like that absolute coward, Tony Fauci. Absolute coward.
Yeah.
Hey, it's back, baby. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, 111
You
times.
got a pardon and you're in front and you pleaded over 100 times at the White House? What are you scared of, Tony?
Yeah.
I thought you were the science.
Yeah.
I thought you were I am science, and you get up there and you can't answer a question?
Yeah.
What are we doing? And how much time did the network spend at that? How much time did they spend on my responses every week, on my vaccination status, on Taylor and Travis's wedding? Did they do even a minute? Did they do even a minute on Tony Fauci?
No, I don't think I've heard anything.
I bet they didn't.
You know what? The best thing is that happened on the painfully woke ESPN station. You know, the idiots who don't know what the W in WNBA stands for. Now, Aaron Rodgers paid a heavy price for challenging COVID mandates. He hasn't forgotten, and neither should you.
Go back to Fauci? Yeah. Go back to the coward Tony Fauci and his science?
Hold on now.
Who's spending the entire time writing in his diary about how fun it is to be famous? You got to be kidding me.
Okay, so on that note.
What are you going to say about me now?
Debate him.
What are you going to say about me now?
No, I got no debate here. You had a 500.
No, seriously, what are they going to say about me now? Now you can't talk about the COVID stuff because obviously it was made, in a lab in China. That's like not even questionable anymore. Tony Fauci is an absolute criminal.
Joining me now is comedian and host of After Hours with Alex Stein. Alex, the sad reality is that the ESPN audience, like the CNN, MSN Now, ABC, NBC, CBS, all those audiences probably didn't see Fauci's testimony. That may be the first they've heard of it.
It's actually, you're probably right, and I'm happy that Aaron Rodgers had the opportunity to call Fauci out because, nobody was targeted harder in the NFL than Aaron Rodgers. Kyrie Irving was canceled from the NBA basically for not getting the vaccine, when in reality, all the conspiracy theories were basically right surrounding COVID-19, the lab leak origins being a lie, and it just feels like a little redemption or retribution, even though he pleaded the Fifth 111 times. I'm happy they still got to grill him, but one thing I'm mad about, they didn't talk about all the beagles that he tested drugs on, or about the giving AIDS patient AZT in the 80s. So Dr. Fauci has a long history of making medical malpractice decisions, in my opinion. So I'm happy that Aaron Rodgers had his day on the most woke sports station known to man.
Absolutely. Calling Fauci a coward and criminal on ESPN, not a bad way to round out your career. Now, Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau have been photographed swimming and sharing intimate moments on a beach in Saint-Tropez. Trudeau was seen placing his hand inside Perry's revealing dress as he applied lotion on her breast. Thankfully, we don't have footage of that. Alex, how much must Canadians hate seeing this? This is a man who caused so much harm to their country, is now swanning around Saint-Tropez, fetching drinks for his pop star girlfriend.
Well, it looks like he's having fun in the south of France, but kind of like how it was very feminine that Dr. Fauci wrote in a diary every day during COVID. He kind of looks like he's wearing the dress in that relationship. Like he's the one carrying the bottles. He's kind of, I don't know. He almost looks like he looks like the woman in the relationship. I think Katy Perry's wearing the pants.
Well, I hope so. She's more successful than he is. He should be the plus one, in my opinion. Now, Will Smith. Let's talk about his children because they continue to raise eyebrows. These Nepo babies are all grown up and they love seeking attention. Let's have a look at son Jaden. He's spotted in this get-up in London. I mean, why? Okay. And let's have a listen to his daughter Willow fangirling over Greta Thunberg.
Am I going to stand up and try to steer this moment towards human nature? That's a really courageous people do that. Greta Thunberg is doing that. We just should be thinking about what's our way in our moments that we want to be steering our environments towards human nature.
Alex, I blame gentle parenting. And this is what happens when you indulge your children too much.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, he basically enabled all this behavior by just being a famous father. And you know what? I would actually give the kids, I give them a little empathy too, because imagine having a dad that's probably on movie sets and the pressure that they must face living in his shadow. So I just think that he nurtured them the wrong way. And that's why they have to seek attention by wearing women's clothing or saying outrageous things. So I actually have a little bit of sympathy and empathy for those kids.
Well, I disagree. I think you are brought up with absolute privilege. You are considered special at school because both your parents are wildly famous. You're obviously living in a very affluent lifestyle. You've got every opportunity available to you. And young Jaden there, remember, he was the star of The Pursuit of Happiness. When he was very young, he was quite brilliant. He's just grown up rather strange. And they've kind of squandered all of that, Alex. I'm having difficulty having sympathy here.
Well, you know, I agree with you. I was going to mention The Pursuit of Happiness, and Jaden crushed that role. And think about it. I mean, I'm sure you've been on movie sets and TV sets. That's a lot of pressure as a young man with a crew around you and being able to act and actually sell it. So obviously he's talented, but like I said, that is a high-pressure situation, and just like Michael Jackson, I think they have a little bit of arrested development. They probably matured too fast, living in Hollywood, being around all these adults, and I think that stunted their growth, and that's why I think they have kind of like that same Michael Jackson arrested development syndrome.
Now, before you go, the Daily Mail has revealed that Taylor Swift's decade-long friendship with Blake Lively imploded after the actress allegedly threatened to expose years of the superstar singer's most intimate secrets unless she lied about her Super Bowl snub in 2025. Sources say Lively was so humiliated by being left off the Super Bowl guest list, she allegedly demanded that Swift make a social media post about how much she regretted that Blake couldn't join her to cheer on Travis. I mean, if this is true, this is absolutely pathetic, Alex. Please, this is a new low for Blake.
Well, you know what? I hope Blake releases those text messages. And I know that they had their wedding with Travis and Taylor at the Madison Square Garden, so I'm sure she got the invite to that. I mean, everybody got invited to that, it seemed like. But I'm just telling you, those text messages of Taylor... Well, did she not go to Madison Square Garden? I'm just saying 10 years of text messages of Taylor Swift crying about all of her ex-boyfriends. I know it's similar to all of her hit albums, but I would love to see those text messages.
Well, you don't need to see them because she makes them into song lyrics and sells millions of albums. So I think she's monetized those text messages already. Alex Stein, thank you so much for your time tonight. And that's all the time we have. And Newsnight is up next.